Revealed, the amazing moment a poor receptionist understood the millionaire hidden in her midst. Lucy's fingers danced over the keyboard, the fluorescent lights flickering above her like a metronome marking time against her relentless routine. Another call, another request, another reminder of the suffocating weight on her shoulders. Each ring of the phone felt like a drop of water on a still pond, sending ripples of anxiety through her mind. Her father's hospital bills loomed large, and her younger brother's dreams of college were becoming echoes of a distant past. Drowning was a constant threat in the mundane chaos. As she hung up from dealing with yet another client's complaint at the law firm, she caught a glimpse of Jonathan through the glass walls of the conference room. A casual silhouette surrounded by suits, his unassuming presence hid a world of wealth. What did he want in a place like this? To him, she was just a receptionist, a cog in a machine that felt more significant in the faces of others. Yet she sensed there was more to him, something beneath the surface that he didn't flaunt, an understanding of the struggles that her boss and his colleagues seemed to overlook. Things began to shift between them when their small talk turned into shared moments of reality. Jonathan saw her spark, her hidden potential that pulsed beneath the surface of daily struggle. He would often pause in the office, leaning slightly against her desk, as they exchanged fleeting conversations that carried the weight of companionship. Those moments consumed her thoughts, battling against the tide of self-doubt that invariably followed. Could she trust him? Or was he just another rich guy with little grasp of the everyday struggles that suffocated her? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But just as Lucy began to confide in Jonathan about the struggles that chained her, the mounting bills and her brother's aspirations, an unexpected crisis erupted at the firm. Whispers of layoffs buzzed through the hallways like a noxious cloud. Anxiety gripped Lucy tightly as she wondered if her job was next on the chopping block. The pressure surged inside her like a storm, clashing against her long-buried hope. Jonathan had taken notice of her distress, an odd mix of concern and admiration flickered in his eyes. Did he really see in her what she struggled to acknowledge? The odds felt grim, yet the thought of stepping into the uncharted territory he suggested seemed too risky, especially when her family hung by a thread. Could she really pivot from sinking into suburban monotony and embrace something new entirely with him? Dread coiled around her gut as the stakes grew higher. Would she betray her family's needs if she dared to chase after her own chance at happiness? The boundaries that reared up felt insurmountable, and each moment with Jonathan only reinforced her conflict. As Lucy stood frozen before her computer, the weight of her choices began to swell, the future spun in uncertainty around her. Could she rise above the suffocating demands of her past? Jonathan's faint voice echoed in her ears, urging her to confront her doubts. The world outside blurred into a haze as she clung to her desk, wrestling between centuries of burden and fluttering hope, the choice before her palpable, yet terrifyingly elusive. Would she rise to seize it, or let her family's reality drag her back down? The hum of the office faded into a dull murmur as Lucy wrestled with the chaotic clash of thoughts in her mind. Each second ticked by with the weight of her dilemma pressing down heavier than the fluorescent lights above. Could she truly surrender the security of her job for a chance at something unknown with Jonathan? Anxiety clawed at her, a relentless reminder of her family's fragile situation. The buzzing phone yanked her back to the present, and she answered it mechanically, words flowing without meaning. As she recycled paperwork on her desk, Lucy stole glances at Jonathan, who sat across the room, seemingly engrossed in a conversation with her boss. The distance felt magnified by her apprehension. She couldn't shake the feeling that he was her lifeline, a beacon from a world where she could breathe. But was she ready to step into that world? During lunch, Jonathan found her by the coffee machine, the same spot that had turned into their informal refuge over the past few weeks. "Hey, you okay?" he asked, a genuine concern lining his voice. His words felt like an invitation to open up, yet the fear of vulnerability tightened her grip on the mug. "I'm just trying to hold everything together," she replied, keeping it light, even as her heart raced beneath the pretense. You're stronger than you realize, he said, leaning slightly closer, inviting closeness without demanding it. I know this place is tough, but you shouldn't feel trapped. You have other options. His words hung in the air, laden with unspoken possibilities. There was a daring edge in his voice, an emphasis on the word options. It reflected not only a path of freedom but a challenge for her to confront everything she had ever known. Was it possible that she could escape her daily grind and craft a new narrative, one where she wasn't just surviving, but thriving? What do you mean by options? She asked, feeling the tingle of curiosity. Jonathan hesitated for a moment, his gaze shifting to the bustling office around them as if gauging who might be listening. Finally, he leaned in, lowering his voice. Let's grab coffee after work. I have some ideas, ways you could grow, way beyond the receptionist role. A rush of adrenaline surged through her, the prospect exciting yet terrifying. Could she dare to see life from a different lens? The looming threat of job cuts hung overhead like storm clouds, yet here he was, painting a future adorned with colors she had never imagined. Just the thought sent her heart racing, even as practicality loomed like an anchor. I'll think about it, she murmured, wanting desperately to accommodate the spark igniting within her while keeping her fears at bay. But deep down, she knew the hesitation wasn't rooted solely in doubt. The idea of leaving her current life felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, staring down into uncharted waters. The day dragged on, each tick of the clock resonating like a countdown in her mind. How long can I ignore this? How long can I stay in this comfortable prison when a door to freedom is calling me? She pondered, realizing that her internal conflict was intensifying, manifesting as a physical tightening in her chest. By the time she clocked out, the weight felt both exhilarating and daunting. Could she muster the courage to face her fears and venture into the unknown? As she walked to her car, Jonathan's words echoed in her ears, "The choice is yours." Was it truly her choice, or was it merely an extension of the fears she had locked away for so long? Feeling both emboldened and cautious, Lucy turned the engine over, the hum igniting a flicker of determination within her. Yet, that fleeting moment was interrupted when she spotted a figure in the rearview mirror, her boss storming across the parking lot. He looked furious, and his eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that siphoned her breath instantly. The moment had come to face a reckoning she hadn't expected. What could she possibly say when nothing felt secure anymore? Dread settled in her stomach. If her boss was here, it meant trouble was brewing, trouble that could force her hand in more ways than one. The tension in Lucy's chest tightened as her boss approached, his expression a storm cloud of fury. She couldn't pinpoint when her heart moved from a cautious flutter to a pounding drum, but anticipation of confrontation hung in the air, thick as fog. The murky uncertainty of her situation breached all surface thoughts, forcing her to confront the reality that she might lose everything she had been clinging to just as new opportunities began to bloom. Lucy. His sharp voice sliced through the evening, and she involuntarily braced for the anticipated reprimand. What are you still doing here? I was just about to leave, she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper as she stepped from the car, her pulse racing. Shut the door, he demanded, his tone carved from ice. She complied, the metallic clang echoing ominously in her ears. The parking lot reflected the unflattering glow of office lights, casting a harsh light on their fraught exchange. She could feel the heat from his anger radiating like a visible wall between them. Do you think you can just coast through your day? Sit here and waste time? He accused, his finger jabbing toward the entrance of the building. I have half a mind to write you up. The word "write up" ignited a chilling bolt of fear. In her state of vulnerability, every critique felt magnified, each word scraping against her fears of inadequacy. I've been trying to manage everything, she managed to say, each syllable a reluctant admission. But I promise I'm going to enough. You need to focus, he interrupting sharply, narrowing his eyes. I know you dream of grander roles, of doing more, but that's not reality here. What do you think you're worth? You're just a receptionist. A warm body to answer phones. Each word felt like a blow, but beneath her hurt walked a fire ignited by Jonathan's earlier conversation. She had never considered her worth being measured solely by her title or responsibilities. Their conversation had awakened cracks in her complacency that grew like fissures in a dam. Maybe being a receptionist isn't all I am, she spat back, surprising even herself with the strength of her voice. It coursed through her like electricity, filling the hollow spaces of doubt with determination. Her boss recoiled, eyes widening in disbelief. "You watch your mouth, young lady." He shot back, but she noticed the hint of uncertainty in his "I doubt, perhaps?" "Maybe it's time I start exploring what I'm really capable of," Lucy said, the words tumbling out as if unraveling the doubts she had clung to for years. Despite the fear, clarity seeped through her. The world in front of her no longer felt pressing, suffocating. In that moment, the potential glittered unsullied. "I might just take you up on those options Jonathan mentioned," she added, testing the waters of her newfound resilience. His face contorted, a medley of anger and disbelief coiling into a stubborn silence. For once, the balance of power tilted slightly away from him. In her heart, Lucy felt a rush of exhilaration. As her boss's demeanor shifted from outrage to defensiveness, Lucy realized this confrontation wasn't just about her struggles but a turning point. She had discovered a voice, a fragment of authority that had lain dormant for too long. "Don't get ahead of yourself," he retorted, though it lacked conviction. No matter what he said, she could feel the wheels turning within her. The thought of finally acting on Jonathan's words surged through her. Perhaps confronting her boss was the first step in her self-reclamation, propelling her toward growth. She turned to leave, the confrontation still buzzing within her, each step feeling lighter. Then, she paused, heart pounding with unfamiliar strength. "If the job cuts come wrapped in a bow, I won't wait for the axe to fall," she said over her shoulder. Once in her car, the situation had crystallized into clarity. The epiphany felt electric, charging her atmosphere with aspiration. Now, she could see the path Jonathan hinted at stretching far beyond the drudgery of her desk. The choices loomed ahead, but there was something almost deliciously intimidating about the possibilities. As she started the car and pulled away, that tension morphed into resolve. Was she truly ready to leap into the unknown, to carve a space where she could thrive? The next steps rang in her mind, uncertain yet inviting. A meeting with Jonathan loomed ahead, promises of options paving the way for a new dawn. But somewhere in the recess of her mind, doubts lingered. What if she stumbled into a world where she proved to be just as inadequate outside her confines than she felt within them? That question hung ominously as the road unfurled ahead of her, teasing her into the adventure yet to come. Stepping into her apartment, Lucy felt the weight of the world shift. The heavy thud of the door closing behind her seemed to echo not just within the small confines of her home but against the thoughts racing through her mind. She switched on the lamp, its soft glow cutting through the shadows that danced around her, a stark contrast to the oppressive energy of the parking lot just hours before. Her heart still pounded. The confrontation was no longer a catalyst of fear, it felt like an ignition. Thoughts whirled in her head, each fueled by the adrenaline of standing up for herself. What am I really capable of, she pondered, flipping through a mental catalog of skills she had purposefully minimized. Delivering the mail, answering phones, making coffee, those were easy to identify, but what else lurked beneath the surface? Sitting on her worn couch, she pulled out her notebook, the same one she'd used since college, pages filled with hopes that had grown dusty while ambitions lay dormant. She flipped to a blank page, staring at the pristine lines as if they were a new beginning. The familiar feeling of hesitation crept in. Am I truly ready to write my own narrative? But it was soon overshadowed by a daring resolve. This was her time to dissect the dreams she had tucked away. With each stroke of her pen, she listed her attributes, considering every aspect of herself she held back from acknowledging. Communication skills, she managed the flow of information in a hectic office. Organization, she kept her desk organized enough, amid chaos, to be a go-to resource. But, what about her untapped creativity? Those afternoons spent sketching in the park, or drafting ambitious ideas for potential projects. Pausing, Lucy felt empowered as clarity began to wash over her. Perhaps she wasn't just a receptionist, she was a gateway to connections and insights that could propel her into the professional realm she yearned for. Jonathan wouldn't have mentioned those options without seeing something in me, she thought, her heart swelling at the idea of finally pursuing a passion that radiated beyond mere survival. The anticipation of her meeting with Jonathan loomed like a beacon. She flipped to the next page, scrawling "meeting with Jonathan" in bold letters, underlined for emphasis. This was the checkpoint that could change everything. But even as hope blossomed, a gnawing apprehension ensued. What if the vision she crafted was nothing more than fanciful thinking? Resolutely, she continued her exploration. List qualities that make me more than just a receptionist. She wrote down each trait, each moment of pride. The thrill of claiming her narrative echoed louder than her doubts, the pen working like a conductor guiding her symphony of self-discovery. An hour passed. The sky outside transformed into twilight, hues of orange and pink sprawling across the horizon. Lucy glanced at herself in the mirror, pulling back her hair with a newfound confidence. I am more than what they see, I hold the keys to my opportunities. Gathering her thoughts, she made a plan. Tomorrow wouldn't be about stumbling through the routine. It would demand intention, a deliberate step into the arena where her dreams lived. But as she set the notebook down, an unsettling thought crept in. $1 million question formed in her mind. What if Jonathan was merely indulging my daydreams without any real substance? The uncertainty sent a shiver down her spine, distracting her from the satisfaction of the evening's revelations. Determined to shoo away lingering doubt, she made a decision. She wouldn't just enter that meeting prepared to accept options. She would enter armed with her defined goals. Lucy drifted to bed, her heart aflutter with excitement but tinged with the uneasiness of the unknown. Tomorrow would be the defining moment, the birth of her potential, or a stark slap of reality. The stage was set, and she was ready to take her first steps into the unknown. But what awaited her on the other side? As sleep washed over her, the question lingered like a ghost. Haunting yet beckoning towards possibilities not yet realized. What if this was the moment where her world cracked wide open, or the moment it all crumbled away? The soft chime of her alarm broke the silence, pulling Lucy from the tangled web of sleep into the light of a new day. The sun peeked through the blinds, illuminating her cluttered apartment and, for the first time in ages, igniting a sense of anticipation rather than dread. Rising, she faced the mirror, fixing her hair with deliberate strokes, each movement reaffirming her resolve. With every brush of her fingers through her locks, the shadows of self-doubt seemed to recede. Today, she would confront her future, or at least the possibility of one substantially brighter than the familiar confines of her desk. After a quick breakfast that barely registered as she wrestled with her thoughts, Lucy revisited her worn notebook, scanning the page she filled with her goals. The words leaped out at her, imbued with a vibrancy she hadn't felt before. Foster creativity. Seek opportunities. Connect with mentors. Each phrase shimmered with promise as she mentally rehearsed what she would say in the meeting. She arrived early at work, pacing the reception area. The place buzzed with its typical energy as employees hustled in. But this morning, Lucy felt like a participant in a grand play, not just an audience member. She took a deep breath, savoring this feeling of being on the verge of change. As the clock ticked toward her meeting with Jonathan, butterflies fluttered in her stomach. What would she say? How could she encapsulate her potential in mere minutes? She envisioned the conversation as a dialogue of empowerment, a two-way street rather than a monologue of her aspirations. When Jonathan finally breezed into the office, he looked as formidable as he always did, but Lucy noted the warmth in his smile as he approached. "Hope you're ready," he said, gesturing toward the conference room. With a nod, she followed, the rhythm of her heart sinking with each step. Sitting across from him, she faced him with newfound composure. "Thank you for meeting with me today," she said, her voice steady, bolstered by everything she had reflected on in the hours leading up to this. "Of course, Lucy. I wanted to see how you felt about the projects I mentioned," Jonathan replied, leaning forward. "Tell me about your ideas." In that moment, Lucy felt the weight of everything she prepared crash into her consciousness. She shared her aspirations with raw honesty, articulating the creative endeavors she had kept buried. As the words flowed, she became increasingly aware of Jonathan's attentive demeanor. He was not simply taking notes, he was engaged, invested. But then, he interrupted gently, "Lucy, let me be sincere here. It's great to see your enthusiasm, but what concerns me is the leap you're proposing. Can you handle the responsibility? Can you pivot from your current role to something that asks much more of you?" His question struck like lightning, illuminating a truth she had been timid to explore. The leap was daunting, yet invigorating. Lucy squared her shoulders, taking a deep breath. "If I accept a challenge that seems out of reach, it means I'm ready to grow. I believe I can handle responsibility, especially if it unlocks my potential and allows me to contribute meaningfully." Jonathan nodded, clearly impressed. "That's the spirit I want to hear. But I need to see your plan, and we need to discuss how you'll step into this new role in a way that maximizes both your skills and our resources." As they mapped out the foundations for her potential projects, Lucy felt elation and trepidation intermingle. Each point they discussed transformed into a brick laid upon the path toward a summit she was now willing to climb. But as questions fired between them, an underlying tension lingered. What if Jonathan was simply paying her lip service, indulging her aspirations without real intent? The thought crept in, sending her pulse racing. With the meeting wrapping up, Lucy realized this was only the beginning. Just when it seemed she was conquering her fears, the shadows of uncertainty loomed large. What if the opportunities she envisioned were illusory? As Jonathan leaned back in his chair, a smile flitting across his face, a chilling thought settled behind her pride: this might be the turning point, or could it just as easily become another false start? Lucy left the conference room buzzing with energy yet unsettled, determined to push her boundaries. The world outside teemed with possibilities, yet she sensed an unseen obstacle in her path. Would she dare to confront it, or would her ambition yield to self-doubt once more? The day was far from over, it was a battleground, and she was preparing for the next round. Would she seize the opportunity or let it slip through her fingers? Lucy returned to her desk, the exhilarating aftermath of her meeting still coursing through her, yet disrupted by a nagging sense of unease. She could vividly recall Jonathan's skeptical tone, the doubt that had shadowed his inquiry about her capabilities. The thrill of presenting her ideas clashed with the unsettling realization of just how vulnerable she felt, exposing her ambitions to scrutiny from someone she admired. As the afternoon unfolded, a cacophony of voices filled the office, but Lucy's mind remained preoccupied with internal dialogues. Could she really turn her aspirations into reality? The roadmap they had laid out felt both promising and flimsy, much like a house of cards that could tumble down with the slightest breeze. Despite the flickers of confidence from Jonathan's encouraging words, doubts took root. If she faltered now, would her aspirations downgrade back into mere daydreams? Determined not to surrender to fear, she turned her focus inward and decided to take tangible steps toward strengthening her plan. A sense of urgency propelled her to gather resources, seeking out articles and case studies about successful transitions similar to the one she was contemplating. She spent her lunch break engrossed in research, each narrative uncovering hidden frameworks that others had used to overcome their own professional stagnations. The intensity of her efforts began to elevate her spirits, yet the underlying tension persisted. Was this dedication merely a distraction from her real insecurities? Was she constructing a castle of ideas, or merely paving a path to another misstep? The days turned into weeks, and Lucy's dedication intensified. She began scheduling coffee chats with colleagues she had admired from afar, asking questions about their career paths, the challenges they had faced, and the decisions that had nudged them toward success. Each interaction unveiled new insights, turning potential mentors into allies. With each story shared, her perspective broadened, revealing strengths within herself she had previously overlooked. But, with knowledge came distance. As she immersed herself in planning, a rift developed between her old responsibilities and the new ambitions sprouting like wildflowers in her mind. A pattern emerged: the deeper she dived into her aspirations, the more her performance in her current role wavered. She began to miss deadlines, snub minor tasks, and slip into a daze during meetings. As deadlines loomed and she felt the pressure mount, a familiar shadow returned, self-doubt whispering that she had reached too far, too soon. One afternoon, her manager called her into the office. The room was small and the air thick with anticipation. As she sat across from him, she braced herself for the feedback she sensed swirling in the air, a critical analysis of her recent decline. Yet, to her shock, what came next was a conversation about potential. He acknowledged the contributions she had made and encouraged her exploration of new projects. "Lucy," he said, leaning forward, sincerity in his gaze, "I see your passion, but it's crucial that you remember what made you effective in your current role. Use that as a foundation to build. You don't need to reinvent yourself overnight." The conversation rattled her. It sparked an intense urge to prove him right, to gather all that she had learned and weave it back into the fabric of her daily tasks rather than allowing herself to drift away. Maybe her past could be as much a part of her future as the visions she had crafted. As she left the meeting, Lucy felt both emboldened and challenged. The cracks of her ambition had revealed the need for a delicate balance between evolving and grounding herself in her existing role. This balance would be her lifeline. The following task loomed large. She needed to create a strategy that merged her newfound insights with her current obligations, weaving them together seamlessly. Would she fortify her ambitions without erasing her past? Her resolve crystallized. Tonight, she de-strategized. And as she did, a fresh thought flickered in her mind. If she began to see every responsibility as an opportunity for growth, was it possible that her past would serve not as a constraint but as a launchpad? Lucy weighed these thoughts against the ticking clock of deadlines. Change felt imminent, but the question haunted her: could she truly master the art of balancing her dual aspirations? As she prepared to shift her focus, a fleeting but powerful intuition nagged. The moment of truth was drawing near, and with it, the potential for clarity if only she was ready for it. The evening was serene, a soft golden light pouring through Lucy's window as she settled into her armchair with her laptop. She felt the weight of responsibility settling over her like a heavy blanket. This was no longer about just moving forward, this was about redefining her pathway while honoring her origins. As she opened a blank document, her mind raced with possibilities. She needed a bridge to connect the aspirations she had nurtured with the steady ground of her current role. Lucy began by dissecting her tasks. Each responsibility, once viewed as a tedious obligation, now appeared as a building block. She crafted a list, labeling each item as either aligned with her goals or as potential growth opportunities. This exercise revealed an unexpected clarity. Items she had previously dismissed as just part of the job could be transformed into stepping stones. The whisper of success was louder now. Each tick on the list was a reminder of her potential. However, the gnawing doubts were relentless. Would this realignment of focus be seen as ambition or a diversion? Jonathan's previous skepticism flickered in her mind, a specter looming just beyond the periphery of her determination. The words her manager had spoken echoed as well. She didn't need to reinvent herself overnight. But how much of herself did she need to change? Was she strong enough to adapt without sacrificing the core of who she was? As she worked, Lucy recalled her conversations with her colleagues, those small slices of their lives that had felt so expansive. She began to look back at each chat, analyzing not just the information they had shared but also the charisma that drove their successes. A realization washed over her: she had been mentored far beyond mere professional tactics. There were relational dynamics at play, nuances in how they approached problems, how they communicated their ideas and harnessed their networks. In that moment of reflection, Lucy made a profound decision: she would intentionally weave those relational skills into her work. The next morning, during team meetings, she would actively engage, asking her coworkers about their perspectives and drawing in their insights. As conversations unfolded, she would strive not just to listen, but to build consensus, transforming her role from a passive participant into an orchestrator of ideas. Feeling emboldened, she drafted a plan that outlined how she could initiate this shift in her approach. It was methodical yet flexible. She would begin by approaching her immediate supervisor and propose a joint project, one that would benefit from her insights and her colleagues' expertise. It was time to present her ideas not as solitary visions but as collaborative efforts. But the clock was ticking. She wrestled with the fear of failure lurking beneath her renewed vigor. Staring at the digital clock, her heart raced. What if they dismissed her suggestions? What if she was deemed unqualified to lead such an initiative? Each question sharpened her resolve to carve out the identity she truly yearned for. As she submitted her proposal to her supervisor, a wave of adrenaline surged through her, mixed with anxiety. The line between professional and personal development was now blurred, and she wasn't sure which emotion held more weight: anxiety or hope. Even as the excitement pulsed in her veins, another thought nudged at her. What if her efforts didn't translate into the growth she envisioned? Would the risk of exposing herself to this potential failure anchor her ambitions, or would it propel her further into the realm of possibility? Tomorrow would be a pivot point. Her meeting with her supervisor could lead to a career-defining opportunity. Everything hinged on this decision. Lucy closed her laptop, her heartbeat echoing in the stillness of her apartment. Clarity felt tantalizingly close, but so did turmoil. The moment of truth was here, and she needed to muster every ounce of bravery she possessed. Where would these choices lead her? Would she surface as a leader or retreat into the shadows of her past? Only time would unveil the outcome. The morning arrived with an electric charge in the air, every moment an echo of potential. Lucy slipped into her office, the familiar scent of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the persistent hum of conversation among her colleagues. The soft glow of the fluorescent lights felt like a spotlight, illuminating the stage for a decisive performance. She walked toward her supervisor's office with purpose, clutching her proposal like a lifeline. As she approached the door, doubt scratched at her resolve. What if he laughed? What if her ideas, carefully crafted in solitude, fell flat? Yet, with each step, she fortified herself with the realization that this was more than just a proposal. It was a manifestation of her commitment to evolve her role within the company. Opening the door, she found her supervisor focused on his laptop, fingers tapping furiously. He glanced up, an eyebrow raised expectantly. "Lucy, good to see you. What's on your mind?" This was at the moment crystallized in time as she took a breath, summoning the resolve she had nurtured since the previous evening. "I've been thinking about some collaborative projects we could initiate to leverage our team's strengths," she started, her voice steady, despite the tremor beneath. "This proposal outlines how we can enhance our processes by integrating everyone's insights." His eyes narrowed thoughtfully as he scanned the document. "Collaborative? Interesting. What makes you believe this will work?" Her heart pounded, sparking a fire in her belly. Here was her chance to confront the very doubt that had fueled her fear. "Because each of us brings a unique perspective to the table. I've realized that our department's greatest potential lies not just in our individual tasks, but how we can communicate and collaborate effectively. If we work together, we can drive results that are far greater than the sum of our parts." Lucy could feel her passion rising, and with it, her confidence. As she explained her ideas, each word became an affirmation of her determination to redefine herself not just as a worker but as a catalyst for change. She painted vivid pictures of brainstorming sessions, shared leadership roles, and mutual support. Her supervisor listened intently, nodding occasionally, his expression shifting from curiosity to something resembling intrigue. As she concluded her presentation, he leaned back, the lines around his eyes crinkling in contemplation. "You've put quite a bit of thought into this. Tell me, what will you do if the others are resistant to change?" The question, though daunting, struck a chord within her. It was a confrontation with her own values. The very essence of leadership was not just in crafting the ideal situation but in navigating resistance. She felt a surge of clarity, a sense of purpose rising above her apprehension. "Then I'll work to understand their concerns. I'll facilitate discussions to address their hesitations, because without their buy-in, the project can't succeed." The silence morphed into a thoughtful pause, the kind that felt like the space before a tidal wave shifted direction. His expression softened. "I appreciate your initiative, Lucy. I'll consider this proposal further and get back to you." As she walked out, adrenaline coursed through her. She had confronted her doubts and revealed her leadership potential. It felt exhilarating, but as she settled in at her desk, another thought crept in. Would her supervisor truly support this vision? Would he advocate for her when push came to shove? Questions loomed large, and the uncertainty clung to her like a heavy cloak. Determined to maintain her momentum, she began reaching out informally to colleagues. Each conversation acted like a trial run for her proposal. Drawing them in with genuine curiosity, she discovered hidden insights and doubts within them, a melting pot of perspectives that added depth to her vision. Yet, every candid exchange solidified an unsettling truth: the ache for validation remained. There was still a distance between ambition and reality, and Lucy knew she would need to address the inevitable resistance head-on. The path ahead was riddled with challenges, but she was resolute. The day wore on, and with each tick of the clock, tension crept higher. Would her supervisor deliver the feedback she craved, or would she find herself grounded once more in the shadows of uncertainty? As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting cold blues across her office space, the waiting intensified. Tomorrow's meeting would either be a pivotal collaborative breakthrough or another test of her courage. The stakes felt higher than ever, leaving Lucy teetering on the edge of transformative growth or quiet resignation. She knew without a doubt that the time had come to face the question she had so long avoided: would she rise up and claim her place as a leader, or retreat once again into self-doubt? The next morning arrived with a palpable weight, each tick of the clock echoing Lucy's anxious heartbeat. She sat at her desk, a stack of notes meticulously organized in front of her, yet the order within felt shallow against the chaos of her thoughts. Anticipation gnawed at her. Today was not simply another day at work, it was a crucible designed to test her aspirations and resolve. As she prepared for the meeting, she replayed the scenarios in her mind, analogous to an actor rehearsing lines. With every imagined conversation, she sought to weave clarity into her vision, to anchor everyone's spirits in a collective mission. But lurking beneath the surface was a nagging fear, the doubt that splintered confidence, whispering questions that threatened to unravel her courage. Lucy glanced cautiously at her colleagues as they entered the meeting room. Their faces were a patchwork of indifference and skepticism, and she couldn't shake the feeling that they would view her proposal with disdain. Seating herself at the table, she took a deep breath, feeling the cool, polished surface beneath her fingers. This was it, this was her arena. Her supervisor arrived, a briefcase in hand, his expression unreadable. Lucy's heart raced. Would he support her? Would he silence her critics? As he settled into his chair and called the meeting to order, an unexpected calm descended over her. Perhaps she was ready for this moment after all. Introducing her proposal with a steady voice, Lucy watched as her colleagues shifted their attention. She began with the compelling reasons behind her initiative: how collaboration could spark innovation, how their diverse perspectives could birth stronger solutions. The words flowed, each phrase a stepping stone toward building a shared vision. As she spoke, a familiar face crinkled at the edges, a colleague known for skepticism. "But what if we just end up wasting time?" he questioned, arms crossed defiantly. A surge of determination filled her, igniting her ability to confront the challenge head-on. Change doesn't happen overnight, and yes, some efforts may seem time-consuming. But think about the potential gain. Isn't that worth a little initial investment? There it was, the energy of conflict she had anticipated. Each critique from her colleagues acted like a mirror, reflecting not only their doubts but also her determination to lead. A back-and-forth dialogue unfolded, and with every exchange, Lucy felt the tension gradually shift in her favor. She listened intently, acknowledging their concerns while weaving in solutions to ease their fears. In that moment, she noticed something remarkable: she wasn't merely defending her ideas. She was sculpting new pathways of understanding, bridging gaps that had once felt insurmountable. Each argument sharpened her resolve, and the very act of advocating for her vision energized her spirit. As the discussion began to take a more collaborative tone, her supervisor jumped in, his voice steady. "Lucy makes some valid points. Perhaps we could pilot this initiative with a smaller team to test its viability." The suggestion landed like a lifebuoy amid a storm. Encouraged by his support, Lucy pressed further, inviting her colleagues to envision what success could look like. They began to share their ideas, discussing possibilities rather than objections. In that dynamic exchange, she felt the seeds of leadership take root. But as the meeting closed, a shadow crept back into her thoughts. Was the positive exchange a fleeting moment, or a signal of genuine change? What if the old resistance resurfaced as soon as she left the room? The lingering uncertainty didn't extinguish her recent victory, it only compounded the stakes as she left the meeting. Navigating her way through the office, a mixture of hope and apprehension flitted through her. Was today a breakthrough, or the calm before the storm? If one meeting had unearthed new possibilities, what lay ahead in the days to come? As she settled back at her desk, the reality of her impact felt both exciting and terrifying. What if the next challenge required stepping even further out of her comfort zone? The chance for growth lay not only in the collaboration she had started but also in facing further doubts that loomed on the horizon. Lucy realized she stood at the precipice of real change, knowing she had to summon even greater courage. Would she continue to advocate for her vision, and how would she respond when challenges inevitably arose? The next hour, the next meeting, the next conversation, they were all arenas for her emerging leadership. As she pondered these questions, her heart raced once more. She had stirred something within her colleagues, but how deep was this transformation? Would they stick with her in the face of impending conflict, or would the tides of resistance return? She tightened her grip on the project notes and steeled herself. The true test of her resolve loomed just out of sight. The following weeks unfolded like a thrilling cascade of opportunities and challenges, each day presenting Lucy with fresh resolutions and hurdles to overcome. The pilot project she had proposed was underway, and the initial results promised a blooming potential, but with it came the inevitable trials that accompanied any form of innovation. Lucy found herself in a balancing act, maintaining the familiar tasks of her receptionist role while navigating the complexities of a team project that demanded a new level of engagement from her. Prompted by her recent surge of confidence, she began to instill her vision with vigor. Rather than merely arranging schedules and answering phones, she spearheaded brainstorming sessions, fostering an environment where her colleagues felt welcome to voice their ideas. As each week passed, Lucy transformed the skeptics into advocates, one conversation at a time. She watched as colleagues who had initially doubted the project began to embrace the collaborative spirit that she fostered. In what seemed like an impossible feat, the long-tenured resistance morphed into active participation. They no longer debated whether her ideas would work but brainstormed ways to enhance and expand upon them. In this mystifying momentum, Lucy developed a newfound spiritual drive. Every meeting felt like a victory, every shared idea a step toward her desired goal. She reveled in the acknowledgement of what she created. The direct impact on her colleagues' renewed enthusiasm bled into her own productivity and creativity. For the first time in her career, she discovered a solid sense of belonging and competence, built on the belief that she could, in fact, lead. However, amidst this burgeoning success, the specter of doubt, the same specter that had haunted her long before Jonathan ever stepped into her life, lurched back into view. It materialized one afternoon when her supervisor brought up the possibility of allocating her to a different role, a role that would leverage your newfound skills, he had said. Panic flickered within Lucy. The thought of leaving the familiar, the very receptionist role that bore her identity for so long was reminiscent of standing on the precipice she had so recently forged through. She reflected on her conversation with her manager. Reservations rushed back as she thought about how fast things had changed since she began to pursue her passions. Could I truly handle a more prominent position? She thought, the notion sending shivers down her spine. But rather than succumbing to fear, Lucy dug deeper. This turmoil became an opportunity for reflection. She returned to her notebook, flipping through those markers of her transformation, the lists of qualities she had once hidden away. Armed with clarity, she contemplated, what would living up to her ambition mean for her identity? The next morning, Lucy approached her supervisor, requesting a time to discuss the prospect of a new role. This was it, she was ready to leverage the growth she had unearthed. With a steady heart and a calm resolve, she articulated not only what she wanted from the position, but how she envisioned contributing meaningfully to the organization. Why do you want this role? He asked, eyes locked on hers. Because I believe I can foster change, not just for myself but for the whole team, Lucy replied, each word resonating with the genuine conviction she had cultivated. I've recognized that my strengths exceed the confines of my current title, and I want to help others unearth theirs as well. An exhilarating smile tugged at the corners of her boss's lips, a flicker of approval surging through her veins. Very well, Lucy. Let us work on a plan to transition you officially into this role. For the first time, the future felt genuinely attainable. That afternoon, a palpable exhilaration swept through her as she prepared for a team check-in, her heart buoyed by the decision of taking control over her career. She stood at the center of her colleagues, now formed into an assembly rather than a disparate group, ready to share news that would further galvanize their efforts. She was moving forward into a role that resonated with who she had become. Though she faced the inevitable obstacles that lay ahead, they no longer felt insurmountable. The transformation she had undergone where she once felt insignificant had solidified her newfound identity as a proactive leader. Lucy was no longer just a figure behind the reception desk. She was a bridge, connecting the ambitions and talents of her team into something spectacularly cohesive. The tether between past and present held the key to her future, and she was ready to embrace it wholeheartedly. The echoes of uncertainty began to fade. She was prepared to navigate the uncharted waters of this new role, understanding that every challenge was an opportunity to demonstrate her capabilities. Lucy stood, ready to inspire others into growth, equipped with the relentless determination born from her journey of self-discovery. In that moment, she truly conquered her fears. She had become the architect of her success. And all her aspirations were poised on the threshold of actualization. Now was the time to flourish, to take her place among the ambitious leaders she had once envied, proving that a remarkable transformation was not just possible, but tangible and real. You need to subscribe now to be part of the stories that redefine potential. Leave a like now to light up the algorithm and show how much you appreciate these inspiring journeys. Comment below with your thoughts and theories about Lucy's incredible journey of transformation. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't keep this uplifting message to yourself.